In Victorian England, love was a labyrinth of rigid rules and secret signals, where a dropped handkerchief or a flick of a fan could seal your fate. Step into 1875, where Elellanena navigates a world of corsets, chaperones, and high-stakes matchmaking to find connection in a society designed to stifle it. Many people look at Victorian dating through romantic eyes. They think about stolen glances across ballrooms, passionate love letters, and gentlemen in top hats proposing on bended knee. Nothing could be further from the truth. For most people, Victorian courtship was a terrifying obstacle course of bizarre rules, awkward interactions, and social landmines that could blow up your entire future. Dating wasn't about finding your soulmate. It was about not accidentally getting engaged to someone you barely knew because you mishandled a handkerchief. Your eyes flutter open in London, 1875. The first thing that hits you is the weight. There's something heavy pressing down on your ribs, squeezing your waist like you're being slowly crushed by a python. You take a shallow breath, that's all you can manage, and realize you've woken up in a corset. Not just any corset, but one cinched so tight you can feel your organs rearranging themselves to make room. Someone's yanking it tighter. Miss Elellanena, please hold still. We must have you looking perfect today, says your lady's maid, Agnes, currently attempting to compress your waist to the fashionable 18 inches. You're 21 years old, in your third season in London, and if you don't secure a husband soon, you'll be well on your way to spinsterhood. Unlike your comfy bed back in 2025, you're perched on the edge of a wooden chair in your dressing room, gripping the sides as Agnes performs what can only be described as socially acceptable torture in the name of beauty. Your mother insists you look your absolute best today. Agnes continues, giving the laces another brutal tug. Lady Harrington's tea is very important. I hear Mr. Blackwood will be in attendance. You stifle a groan. Mr. Blackwood, the latest in your mother's parade of suitable matches, wealthy, from a good family, and about as interesting as watching paint dry. But he's eligible, and in Victorian England, that trumps personality every time. Courtship in the 1800s was a real-life game of chess where one wrong move could ruin your entire life. Agnes, you whisper, must the corset be so tight? I could hardly breathe at Lady Pembroke's ball last week. Your mother says a gentleman doesn't want a wife who eats more than a bird, Agnes replies, not easing up one bit. Now, let's get you into your dress. The dress, a pale blue morning gown with enough layers to clothe a small village, has a wire cage crinoline underneath to keep the skirt in a perfect bell shape. It looks elegant, but feels like you're wearing a prison. You can't sit properly, can't move quickly, can't even go to the bathroom without a major operation. Not that a proper Victorian lady would ever admit to having bodily functions. Dating in Victorian times wasn't just about finding someone you liked. It was about securing your entire future. For women especially, marriage was essentially their career. A bad match could mean a lifetime of misery with no escape. Divorce was nearly impossible, incredibly scandalous, and usually left women destitute. So the stakes were impossibly high. Your mother has been up since dawn, Agnes says, arranging your hair. She's determined to see you engaged before the season ends. You know what she's not saying. Your younger sister is waiting her turn to be introduced to society, and having two unmarried daughters doing rounds at the same time will be both expensive and slightly embarrassing. You're taking up space in the marriage market. Time to move inventory. The Victorian marriage market, literally called the season, ran from April to August when Parliament was in session. Aristocratic and upper-middle-class families would pack up from their country estates and head to London for months of strategically planned social events. The entire purpose, throwing young women and men together in carefully supervised settings so they could find suitable matches. Miss Elellanena, your mother wants to review your dance card before we leave, Agnes says, pinning the final strands of your hair into place. The dance card, a little booklet attached to your wrist by a ribbon, where a gentleman would pencil in which dances they reserved with you. A full dance card meant you were popular. An empty one meant you were failing miserably. Dating by way of public performance and immediate visible judgment. Fun. Agnes. What if I don't want to marry Mr. Blackwood or any of Mother's choices? Agnes looks at you like you suggested flying to the moon. Miss Elellanena, she says quietly, what choice do you have? And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because in Victorian England, particularly for women, choice wasn't really part of the equation. The goal was marriage, preferably an advantageous one, and the entire society was structured around making that happen. Let's talk about the coming out process, which has nothing to do with sexuality and everything to do with announcing, hello, world, I am officially on the marriage market. For upper-class girls, this meant being presented at court, literally curtsying before the queen to signal your debut into society. It was essentially a royal stamp of approval saying, this one's ready for marriage. Slightly less posh families would announce their daughter's eligibility through local balls and dinner parties. Your coming out had been 3 years ago. You remember standing in a line of nervous girls in white dresses with feathers in their hair, waiting to curtsy before Queen Victoria herself. One girl actually fainted. Nobody helped her until after her presentation was complete. Priorities. There, Agnes says, stepping back to admire her work. You look beautiful, Miss Elellanena. You stare at yourself in the mirror. You do look beautiful in Victorian sense. Pale skin achieved through staying indoors and, for some women, a little lead-based face powder. Tightly corseted waist, elaborately styled hair. You're a perfect product, packaged and ready for market. When you head downstairs, your mother is waiting in the drawing room, already dressed in her visiting clothes. She looks you up and down with the critical eye of a livestock judge at a county fair. Elellanena, dear, turn around. You do a slow spin, and she nods approvingly. The blue brings out your eyes. Mr. Blackwood mentioned he favors blue. Of course he did. And of course she remembered. Your mother has been collecting information on eligible bachelors like she's building a dossier for the Secret Service. Mother, you begin carefully. I was thinking perhaps I might spend some time in the library today instead. Don't be ridiculous. She cuts you off. Lady Harrington has specifically arranged for several eligible gentlemen to be present. It will be most impolite to decline. Translation, get in the carriage. We're going husband hunting. The carriage ride to Lady Harrington's is uncomfortable, both because of your corset and the lecture your mother delivers on property etiquette. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't laugh too loudly. Don't eat too much. Don't drink too much tea. Don't sit too close to a gentleman. But also, don't be standoffish. It's like trying to navigate a labyrinth blindfolded. And remember, your mother says as the carriage pulls up the impressive townhouse, Mr. Blackwood is heir to a considerable fortune. His family owns property in both Kent and Yorkshire. You nod dutifully. Property in Kent and Yorkshire. How thrilling. How romantic. The footman helps you down from the carriage, and you follow your mother up the steps to Lady Harrington's home. Inside, the drawing room is already filled with people, mostly women in elegant dresses with strategic sprinkling of eligible bachelors. The men look as uncomfortable as the women look determined. It's a battlefield disguised as a tea party. Mrs. Pembroke, Miss Pembroke, how delightful. Lady Harrington swoops down upon you, air-kissing your mother and examining you with sharp eyes. Elellanena, my dear, you look positively blooming. Come, there are several people you simply must meet. And so it begins. You're paraded around the room like a prize heifer, introduced to a series of gentlemen who all blur together in a sea of side whiskers and polite bows. You make the same small talk about the weather, the season, the latest performance of the theater, careful to seem intelligent enough to not be dull, but not so intelligent as to be threatening. Victorian rules for conversation between unmarried men and women were gloriously, hilariously specific. A proper young lady couldn't just start chatting with a man she didn't know. She had to be formally introduced by a mutual acquaintance. Even after an introduction, physical contact was strictly limited. No touching, definitely no hugging. A gloved hand might be offered for the briefest of handshakes or to be escorted into dinner. Miss Pembroke. A deep voice breaks into your thoughts, and you turn to see a tall man with dark hair and impressively bushy sideburns bowing slightly. I believe we met at Lady Westmoreland's ball last month. Henry Blackwood at your service. So, this is the famous Mr. Blackwood. You curtsy in response, noting that he is at least better looking than your mother had led you to believe. Not that it matters. His personality could still be as dry as last week's toast. Mr. Blackwood, you respond. How lovely to see you again. I trust you are enjoying the season thus far. He nods, and you launch into the expected script of polite conversation. The thing about Victorian dating is that it was almost impossible to get to know someone properly before marriage. All your interactions were supervised. All your conversations were limited to approved topics. Even your letters could be read by parents or guardians. You were basically expected to decide if you wanted to spend your entire life with someone based on how well they made small talk about the weather and whether they could dance a proper quadrille. Would you care to take a turn about the room? Mr. Blackwood asks, offering his arm in a perfectly proper manner. You nod and place your hand lightly on his arm, careful to maintain the appropriate distance between your bodies, close enough to converse, far enough to prevent any improper contact. Your mother, you notice, is watching like a hawk from across the room, a satisfied smile on her face. I understand you enjoy reading, Miss Pembroke, Mr. Blackwood says as you stroll slowly around the perimeter of the room. May I ask what authors you prefer? You hesitate. This is a trap. If you name something too intellectual, you risk seeming blue-stockingish, a term for overly educated women who are considered unmarriageable. If you name something too frivolous, you risk seeming empty-headed. Better to aim for the middle ground. I enjoy Jane Austen, you reply, which is both true and safe, and some poetry. Excellent taste, he nods approvingly. I myself enjoy Sir Walter Scott and Wordsworth. And thus begins the delicate dance of trying to gauge compatibility through the most constrained conversation imaginable. It's like trying to assess someone's entire personality by watching them select produce at a grocery store. Good luck with that. May I be so bold as to request the honor of calling on you tomorrow afternoon? Mr. Blackwood asks as your circuit of the room nears completion. This is significant. A gentleman requesting to call means he wants to visit you at home, still chaperoned, of course, which indicates serious interest. Your mother will be ecstatic. I would be delighted. You respond, because what else can you say? The rest of the tea passes in a blur of cucumber sandwiches, lukewarm tea, and stilted conversation. By the time you and your mother return home, your face hurts from maintaining a pleasant expression, and your ribs are screaming for release from the corset. Mr. Blackwood was quite attentive. Your mother says, practically glowing with satisfaction, and he's requested to call tomorrow. I knew the blue dress was the right choice. Yes, mother. It was definitely the blue dress that sealed the deal, not the substantial dowry you'll bring to the marriage or the advantageous connection between our families. He seems nice, you offer, which is about as enthusiastic as you can manage. Nice, my dear? He's perfect. Excellent family, substantial means, and still under 30. You couldn't ask for a better match. You couldn't ask for much of anything in Victorian dating. That was kind of the point. Here's the wild thing about Victorian courtship. The rules were so rigid, so formalized, that people had to develop elaborate workarounds just to communicate basic human feelings. Because you couldn't just say, hey, I like you, or actually, I think you're boring as wallpaper paste. Instead, you had entire silent languages. The way you held your fan, how you wore your gloves, where you placed your calling card, all to convey messages you weren't allowed to speak aloud. Agnes, please help me out of this dress. You say once you're back in your room, I can hardly breathe. As Agnes unlaces your corset, you take your first deep breath in hours. The relief is immediate and intense, like finally getting into your comfy clothes after a day in uncomfortable business where, but 1,000 times more extreme. Mr. Blackwood seemed quite taken with you. Agnes comments as she hangs up your dress. Your mother believes he might propose before the season's end. The thought sends a chill through you. Marriage to Mr. Blackwood, a man you've spoken to for perhaps a total of 30 minutes, always under supervision, a man whose true character, interests, temperament, and habits you know absolutely nothing about. Yet you're expected to entrust your entire future to him. That night, as you lie in your bed, a four-poster with heavy curtains that can be drawn for warmth and privacy, you stare up at the canopy and consider your options. They are unfortunately limited. You could refuse Mr. Blackwood if he proposes, but that would mean continuing on the marriage market, enduring more seasons, more teas, more awkward conversations with strange men. Your parents would be disappointed, possibly angry. Society would begin to wonder what was wrong with you. Or you could accept securing your future, but tie yourself forever to a man you barely know. There was a darkness to Victorian dating that the romantic novels don't show you. People made desperate choices because the alternatives were worse. Women especially had few options outside of marriage. No real career prospects, limited education, and often no independent income. Is it any wonder that Victorian literature is filled with disastrous marriages? They were basically playing relationship roulette with the highest possible stakes. The next day, Mr. Blackwood calls at exactly the appropriate hour. Not too early to seem eager, not too late to seem disrespectful. He's shown into the drawing room where you wait with your mother, who has strategically arranged herself at the far end of the room, close enough to chaperone, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. Miss Pembroke, he bows, you look lovely today. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. You curtsy in return. Won't you sit down? He takes a seat across from you, maintaining a proper distance. Your mother pretends to be engrossed in her embroidery, but is clearly listening to every word. I trust you're well, he asks. Very well, thank you, you reply. And yourself? Quite well. An awkward silence falls. This is the problem with Victorian dating small talk. There are only so many polite nothings you can exchange before you run out of approved topics. I was wondering, Mr. Blackwood says finally, if you and your mother might do me the honor of accompanying me to the botanical gardens tomorrow. The weather promises to be fair. A public outing. Another step in the courtship progression. Your mother looks up from her embroidery, beaming. We would be delighted, she answers before you can speak. Wouldn't we, Elellanena? Yes, you say, because again, what choice do you have? That sounds lovely. Mr. Blackwood stays for exactly the appropriate amount of time. Not so short as to be rude, not so long as to be presumptuous, before taking his leave with another bow and a promise to call for you at 2 o'clock tomorrow. As soon as he's gone, your mother is by your side, practically vibrating with excitement. A walk in the gardens. My dear, he's clearly smitten. I wouldn't be surprised if he speaks to your father within the month. Mother, I've barely spoken to him. You protest. I hardly know him at all. She pats your hand condescendingly. You'll have a lifetime to get acquainted after you're married. The important thing is that he's respectable, well off, and from a good family. The rest will follow. The Victorian approach to marriage compatibility was wildly different from ours. Today, we worry about emotional connection, shared values, and whether someone's Netflix preferences are compatible with ours. Back then, it was all about social standing, financial security, and family connections. Actual personal compatibility was considered a nice bonus if it happened, but certainly not a requirement. That night, as Agnes helps you prepare for bed, she notices your distracted expression. Troubled thoughts, Miss Elellanena? She asks, brushing out your hair. Agnes, do you think it's possible to marry for love in our world, or is it always just a business arrangement? Agnes's hands pause briefly before resuming their work. I think, she says carefully, that love can grow where it's planted, but the soil must be right first. Translation, sure, you might eventually fall in love with Mr. Blackwood, but first make sure he's not going to leave you penniless or treat you badly. You climb into bed, your mind still spinning with thoughts of tomorrow's outing and what it might mean for your future. The mattress is stuffed with horsehair, the luxury option in Victorian times, and your sheets are fine linen. But despite these comforts, sleep feels distant. In the quiet darkness of your bedroom, you wonder what Mr. Blackwood is thinking. Is he lying awake, too, contemplating a future with you, or is he simply checking off boxes on his list of requirements for a suitable wife? Does he care about your thoughts, your dreams, your desires, or just your dowry and family connections? You'll likely never know. That's the tragedy of Victorian dating. Two people making life-altering decisions based on the barest acquaintance, both wearing masks of propriety that hide their true selves. It's a system designed to create matches, not happiness. As you finally drift towards sleep, your last thought is of tomorrow's garden walk and what new steps in this elaborate courtship dance it might bring. The rules are clear, the expectations set. All that remains is to play your part in this carefully choreographed performance and hope that when the music stops, you find yourself in a partnership you can endure, if not enjoy. The morning of your garden outing dawns bright and clear. Your stomach is in knots, not from excitement, but from the sheer weight of expectations. Yesterday, your mother spent 3 hours coaching you on proper garden walking etiquette, as if strolling through flowers requires specialized training. Agnes, you whisper as she tightens your course of the day, what if I trip and fall into a rose bush? Mother would never recover from the shame. Agnes snorts, then quickly composes herself. Miss Elellanena, just remember to keep a proper distance from Mr. Blackwood, and for heaven's sake, don't touch anything without your gloves. Ah, yes, the gloves. In Victorian England, bare hands were practically considered obscene. A proper lady never went outdoors with naked hands. The physical barrier fabric between your skin and the world was just one more way to maintain that precious proper distance between yourself and potential suitors. As Agnes helps you into your walking dress, a slightly less formal outfit that still requires a corset, petticoats, and enough fabric to upholster a sofa, you notice her slipping something into your small handbag. What's that? You ask. Your fan, Agnes says with meaningful look. The ivory one with the painted birds. Of course, your fan, that seemingly innocent accessory that's actually the Victorian woman's secret weapon. Women use these signals to communicate secretly with potential suitors across crowded rooms, all while looking perfectly proper. Remember what I taught you, Agnes murmurs as she arranges your hair. The fan is your voice when your lips must remain silent. Agnes had been the one to teach you the secret language of the fan. Knowledge passed down from lady's maid to lady's maid. A covert communication system developed by women who had no other way to express their true feelings in public. Drawing it across your cheek means, Agnes quizzes you. I love you. You respond automatically. Twirling in the right hand? I wish to be rid of you. Resting on your right cheek? Yes. Left cheek? No. Agnes nods approvingly. Good. Use it wisely. You almost laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here you are, a grown woman having to resort to elaborate fan movements just to say yes or no to a man. But that was Victorian dating for you. All about indirect communication, hidden messages, and plausible deniability. When a maid announces Mr. Blackwood's arrival at precisely 2 o'clock, you and your mother descend the stairs with practiced grace. He stands in the foyer, top hat in hand, looking every inch the proper Victorian gentleman. Mrs. Pembroke, Miss Pembroke, he bows. I brought the carriage. Shall we? The carriage ride to Botanical Gardens is silent and awkward, with your mother sitting between you and Mr. Blackwood like a human chastity belt. When you arrive, Mr. Blackwood helps first your mother, then you, down from the carriage, careful to touch only your gloved hand, and only for the briefest moment. The gardens are beautiful, filled with exotic plants from across the British Empire. As you stroll along the gravel paths, your mother deliberately slows her pace, allowing you and Mr. Blackwood to walk slightly ahead, still within sight, but with the illusion of privacy. I must say, Miss Pembroke, Mr. Blackwood begins, you look particularly lovely today. Thank you, sir. You respond, keeping your eyes modestly lowered. I've been meaning to ask, do you enjoy music? I myself am quite fond of pianoforte. Probing questions about shared interests. The Victorian equivalent of, what's your favorite Netflix show? I do enjoy music, you reply, though I play only tolerably well. I should very much like to hear you play sometime, he says, and there's a warmth in his voice that wasn't there before. Is he actually interested or just going through the motions? It's impossible to tell through the thick veil of propriety that covers every interaction. This is when a fan comes into play. As you walk, you open your fan and begin to fan yourself slowly. According to the secret code, this indicates, I am married, which is obviously not true, but you're curious to see if Mr. Blackwood, knows the language. His eyes flick to your fan, then back to your face, a slight frown creasing his brow. So he does know the code. Interesting. You switch tactics, closing your fan and drawing across your cheek. I love you. His eyebrows shoot up in surprise. Miss Pembroke, he says, his voice slightly strained. Are you feeling quite well? Perhaps the sun is too strong for you. You suppress a smile and switch signals again, this time resting the fan against your left cheek. No. Now he looks thoroughly confused. Perhaps we should find some shade, he suggests. Clearly try and make sense of your contradictory messages. The thing about the language of the fan is that it was never standardized. Different etiquette books published different meanings for the same gestures. What meant I love you in one guide might mean leave me alone in another. It was a communication system designed for miscommunication. As you continue walking, your mother catches up, perhaps sensing that something unusual is happening. Ah, the orchid house, she exclaims. Shall we? Inside the humid glass structure, exotic orchids bloom in a riot of colors. It's beautiful. But the real attraction is a moment when your mother becomes distracted by a particularly unusual specimen, and you find yourself momentarily alone with Mr. Blackwood behind a large palm. Miss Pembroke, he says quietly, I confess I'm having trouble interpreting your signals. So, he doesn't know the fan language. You feel a blush creeping up your neck. I was merely cooling myself. You lie. Close your fan with a snap. Of course, he nods, but there's a twinkle in his eye that suggests he doesn't believe you for a second. Though if I may be so bold, if you wish to communicate with me, perhaps words would be clearer than other methods. Is he teasing you? That seems impossibly forward for a Victorian gentleman. But before you can respond, your mother reappears, and the moment is gone. The fan wasn't the only secret communication system in the Victorian dating arsenal. There was also the language of flowers, where each bloom carried a specific message. A red rose meant love, of course, but yellow carnations meant you have disappointed me, and striped carnations meant I cannot be with you. As you exit the orchid house, a flower seller at the garden gate catches your eye. She's offering small posies for sale, little bunches of mixed flowers tied with ribbon. On impulse, you pause. Would you like one, miss? The woman asks, holding out a particularly pretty arrangement of daisies and forget-me-nots. Before you can answer, Mr. Blackwood steps forward. Allow me, he says, purchasing the posy and presenting it to you with a slight bow. You accept the curtsy, aware that this small exchange is laden with meaning. A gentleman giving a lady flowers is a significant step in courtship. And these particular flowers, daisies for innocence and forget-me-nots for true love, carry their own message. Did Mr. Blackwood choose this specific posy on purpose? Does he know the language of flowers, as well as the language of fans? Or was it simply the prettiest one available? How thoughtful, Mr. Blackwood. Your mother approves, watching the exchange with hawk-like attention. And then there's a handkerchief, another seemingly innocent item loaded with secret meaning. You've tucked one into your sleeve, as every proper lady does. Dropping it, accidentally on purpose, is a classic move to attract a gentleman's attention. As you continue your walk, you deliberately let your handkerchief slip from your sleeve to the ground. Mr. Blackwood immediately notices. Miss Pembroke, you've dropped your handkerchief, he says, bending to retrieve it. Now comes the crucial moment. How he returns it will indicate his interest. If he simply hands it back, he's being polite but not particularly interested. If he presses it to his heart before returning it, he's declaring his affection. Mr. Blackwood does neither. Instead, he tucks the handkerchief into his coat pocket with a smile. I believe it's customary for a gentleman to keep such a token, is it not? With your permission, of course. Your mother looks like she might faint from joy. This is practically a declaration of intent in Victorian terms. Yes, you managed to say, your face burning. You may keep it. Congratulations. You've just engaged in the Victorian equivalent of changing your Facebook status to in a relationship. By the time you return home from the gardens, you're exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the mental gymnastics required to navigate Victorian courtship rituals. Every gesture, every word, Every glance has been calculated and analyzed for hidden meaning. Well, your mother demands as soon as Mr. Blackwood has taken his leave, what did you think of him? What can you say? That you spent most of the outing sending mixed signals with your fan just to see if he understood them? That you're still not sure if he chose those flowers randomly or with specific intent? That you now have one fewer handkerchief, but no better understanding of the man who might become your husband? He seems kind. You offer, which is about as enthusiastic as you can honestly be. Kind, your mother exclaims. He's perfect. Did you see how he kept your handkerchief and those flowers? I wouldn't be surprised if he speaks to your father by the end of the week. That sends a jolt of panic through you. So soon? But you've had exactly 2 proper conversations with a man. Mother, surely that's too quick. We hardly know each other. She waves away your concern. Nonsense. Your father and I were engaged after 3 meetings. That's how it's done in proper society. The Victorian timetable for courtship could be alarmingly fast by modern standards. Without the luxury of casual dating or getting to know someone over time, decisions had to be made quickly, often based on very limited information. Later that evening, as Agnes helps you prepare for bed, she notices your troubled expression. Was the outing not to your liking, Miss Elellanena? She asks, brushing out your hair. Agnes, how can I possibly decide if Mr. Blackwood would make a good husband? I know nothing about him beyond his manners and his fondness for the pianoforte. Agnes sighs. That's why we have the language of fans and flowers and all the rest. To try to discover a person's true nature when society won't let you ask directly. But it's also confusing, you protest. I tried using the fan signals today, and I think I just confuse him. Agnes can't help but laugh. The problem with secret languages, Miss Elellanena, is that not everyone reads the same dictionary. That night, as you lie in bed, you think about the day's events, the fan signals, the flowers, the handkerchief. All these elaborate methods of indirect communication developed because direct communication was forbidden. It's absurd, really, all these hoops to jump through just to say, I like you, or I don't like you. But then, isn't modern dating full of its own secret languages? The delayed text response, the social media like, the seen receipt without a reply. Maybe we haven't come as far from Victorian times as we'd like to think. The next morning brings a delivery, a small package for you, accompanied by a note. Your mother watches eagerly as you open it to find a beautifully embroidered handkerchief with your initials in one corner. The note reads simply, to replace the one I claimed. Yours, H.B. Your mother is beside herself with excitement. A gift, and such a personal one. My dear, this is most promising. You examine the handkerchief, turning it over in your hands. It's lovely, and the gesture is thoughtful. But what does it really tell you about Henry Blackwood as a person, as a potential husband, as someone you might spend the rest of your life with? Nothing. It tells you he has good manners and enough money to buy fine handkerchiefs on a whim. That's it. This is a fundamental problem with Victorian dating. All style, no substance. All these elaborate rituals and codes were designed to maintain propriety, but they made it nearly impossible to form genuine connections. We must send a response immediately. Your mother declares. A thank you note, properly worded to show appreciation, without seeming too eager. Even your gratitude has to be carefully calibrated. And perhaps, she continues, warming to her theme, we should invite Mr. Blackwood to dinner next week. Nothing too formal, just family. It would be an appropriate next step. The steps of courtship laid out like a dance. Me at a social event, exchange brief conversation, a chaperone outing, a small gift, a family dinner. Each move precisely calculated, each response carefully measured. Later that day, your younger sister Jane bounces into your room, her eyes sparkling with mischief. At 18, she's just started her first season and finds the whole process thrillingly romantic rather than frustratingly opaque. Elellanena, is it true? Did Mr. Blackwood send you a handkerchief? She demands, flopping onto your bed in the most unladylike manner. He did, you confirm, showing her the delicate square fabric. How romantic, she sighs. Do you think he'll propose soon? Jane, I've barely spoken to him. We've met exactly 3 times. She shrugs. That's more than enough. Emily Harrington got engaged to Mr. Thornfield after meeting him just twice, and they say she's blissfully happy. They say, you repeat skeptically. Who knows what goes on behind closed doors once the courting performance is over and real marriage begins? Well, I think it's terribly exciting, Jane says. And he's so handsome with those dark eyes. You could do much worse, you know. That's the bar for Victorian marriage. Could do worse. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, is it? Anyway, Jane continues, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Mary Abbott told me that her cousin taught her a secret trick with gloves. If you drop your right glove, it means you're interested. If you drop your left, it means go away. And if you drop both, you ask dryly. I don't know. Perhaps it means you're clumsy. Jane giggles. The thing about these secret communication systems is that they kept evolving and getting more elaborate. Fans, flowers, handkerchiefs, gloves, parasols, even the way you wore your hat or arranged your hair could send signals. It was like a never-ending arms race of coded flirtation. Oh, Jane exclaims, jumping up from the bed. I almost forgot. Mother wants you to come downstairs. She's planning the dinner menu for when Mr. Blackwood visits, and she wants your input. Translation. Mother wants to remind you which fork to use and coach you on appropriate dinner conversation topics. As you follow Jane downstairs, you can't help but wonder what Mr. Blackwood would be like if you could just talk to him normally, without the fans and the handkerchiefs and the flowers and the constant supervision. Would you actually like him? Would he like the real you? In Victorian dating, you might get engaged before you ever had a chance to find out. The dinner with Mr. Blackwood is set for Friday evening. Your mother spends the entire week in a state of barely contained hysteria, ordering the cook to prepare his most impressive dishes, polishing the best silver, and arranging fresh flowers in every room. You'd think the queen herself was coming to visit, not a potential son-in-law. Elellanena, for the last time, you must wear the blue silk. Your mother insists, rifling through your wardrobe with growing frustration. The neckline is most becoming, and Mr. Blackwood has expressed a preference for blue. The blue silk is evening wear, Mother, you point out. For family dinner, the green would be more appropriate. Your mother looks at you like you suggested dining in your undergarments. This is not just any family dinner. This is the dinner that could determine your entire future. No pressure or anything. The day of the dinner, the entire household is in an uproar. Maids scurry about with fresh linens and polished silverware. The cook has been up since dawn preparing a 7-course meal. Your father retreats to his study, wisely choosing to avoid the chaos until absolutely necessary. You're confined to your room to rest before the evening, though how anyone could rest with this level of tension in the air is beyond you. Agnes brings you a cup of tea and a knowing smile. The whole house has gone mad, she remarks, setting down the tray. Mrs. Davis in the kitchen is threatening to quit if anyone else goes down there to check on the progress of the meal. This is ridiculous. You sigh, sipping your tea. It's just dinner. Agnes gives you a look. It's never just dinner, Miss Elellanena. Not in this world. And she's right. In Victorian society, every social interaction was loaded with meaning, weighted with expectation, and governed by rules more complicated than international diplomacy. A dinner invitation to a single gentleman was practically an announcement of intent. The family sizing him up, him evaluating his potential future home. By 6 o'clock, you're dressed in the blue silk. Your mother won that battle. Corseted within an inch of your life, and your hair is arranged in an elaborate style that required 45 minutes and about 100 hairpins to achieve. You can feel at least 3 of them digging into your scalp already. Perfect, your mother pronounces, circling you like a general inspecting troops before battle. Remember, speak when spoken to, laugh at his jokes, but not too loudly, and for heaven's sake, don't talk about those dreadful novels you insist on reading. Heaven forbid you reveal that you have actual thoughts and interests. Mr. Blackwood arrives at exactly 7 o'clock, dressed impeccably in evening attire, bearing a small bouquet for your mother and a single perfect rose for you, a gesture that makes your mother practically vibrate with delight, and your father raise an eyebrow in subtle amusement. Dinner is a carefully choreographed performance. Your father leads your mother into the dining room, followed by Mr. Blackwood escorting you. The seating arrangement is strategic. Mr. Blackwood beside you, but with your mother directly across to monitor every interaction. The conversation is just as choreographed. Safe topics only. The weather, pleasant for the season. The latest performance at the theater, Mr. Blackwood found it diverting. Mutual acquaintances, all in good health. Thank you for asking. Nothing personal. Nothing controversial. Nothing that might reveal actual personality or character. It's like watching actors recite lines from a particularly boring play. Miss Pembroke, Mr. Blackwood says during a lull between courses, your mother tells me you're an accomplished pianist. I'd be honored to hear you play after dinner. And there it is, the after-dinner performance, another staple of Victorian courtship. Young ladies were expected to display their accomplishments, usually music, singing, or perhaps reciting poetry, like circus animals performing tricks. See how cultured and refined your future wife is. Marvel at her decorative talents. I would be delighted. You respond automatically, though the thought makes your palms sweat. You're a mediocre pianist at best, having practiced only because it was expected, not from any real passion or talent. After dinner, the real test begins. According to Victorian custom, the ladies withdraw to the drawing room, leaving the gentlemen to their port and cigars. This brief separation gives your mother the opportunity to grill you on your impressions, while simultaneously offering Mr. Blackwood and your father privacy to discuss more serious matters like your dowry and marriage prospects. He is most attentive. Your mother whispers excitedly in the drawing room. And did you see how he looked at you during the fish course? Most promising. You're not sure what a promising look during the fish course entails, but you nod anyway. When the gentlemen finally join you, your father's expression is inscrutable, but there's a certain satisfaction in his manner that makes your stomach tighten. Some agreement has been reached, some understanding established. Now comes your performance. You take your place at the pianoforte, acutely aware of everyone watching. Your fingers tremble slightly as you begin to play a simple Mozart piece. Difficult enough to show skill, but not so challenging that you're likely to make embarrassing mistakes. Mr. Blackwood stands beside the instrument, turning pages for you, another ritualized interaction that allows a moment proximity without impropriety. You're intensely aware of his presence, the slight scent of tobacco from the after-dinner cigars, the careful way he watches for your nod to turn the page. When you finish playing, there's polite applause and appropriate compliments, regardless of the actual quality of your performance. That's not really the point. The point is that you've demonstrated your suitability as a cultured wife who can entertain guests. The evening continues with conversation in the drawing room, tea served at precisely the right time, and Mr. Blackwood taking his leave a respectable hour. Not too early to suggest disinterest, not too late to suggest impropriety. At the door, he bows over your hand, his lips not quite touching your glove fingers, the closest thing to physical contact permitted in this elaborate courtship dance. Miss Pembroke, thank you for a most enjoyable evening, he says, his eyes meeting yours briefly. Might I have the honor of escorting you and your family to church on Sunday? Church attendance, the most respectable of all courtship activities. In Victorian society, being seen together at church was practically an announcement of serious intentions. Your mother, hovering nearby, practically glows with approval. We would be delighted. Your father answers for you, clapping Mr. Blackwood on his shoulder in a rare display of warmth. Once he's gone, your parents exchange meaningful looks. Well, your mother demands, what did he say to you, Edward? Your father clears his throat. Nothing definite yet, but he expresses admiration for Elellanena and his hope to become better acquainted with our family. I believe his intentions are serious. They discuss you as if you're not standing right there, as if your opinion on this man who might become your husband is irrelevant, because in many ways it is. The decision will ultimately be made by your father based on factors like Mr. Blackwood's financial prospects, family connections, and reputation, not on whether you actually like him or could imagine spending your life with him. Later, in the privacy of your bedroom, Agnes helps you out of the elaborate dinner dress and corset. As you take your first deep breath in hours, she looks at you curiously. Well, Miss Elellanena, what did you think of Mr. Blackwood this evening? That's the question, isn't it? What do you think of him? You've now spent perhaps a total of 5 hours in his company, all under strict supervision, engaging only in the most superficial conversation. Do you know him any better than you did before? Can you make a life-altering decision based on this limited information? He seems pleasant. You offer, which makes Agnes roll her eyes. Pleasant, she repeats. High praise indeed. What would you have me say, Agnes? That I'm madly in love after 5 hours of talking about the weather and listening to him compliment my mediocre piano playing. Agnes sighs as she brushes out your hair. No, miss, but perhaps you could look for smaller signs of character. Did he speak kindly to the servants? Did he listen when you spoke, or merely wait for his turn to talk? Was he patient when your mother told that interminable story about Lady Harrington's garden party? These are surprisingly insightful questions, and you consider them carefully. Mr. Blackwood had indeed thanked the footman who took his hat. He had appeared to listen attentively when you briefly mentioned your interest in botany after the garden visit, and he had smiled politely through your mother's lengthy anecdote without showing a trace of impatience. Small things, perhaps, but in a courtship system that reveals so little, perhaps small things are all you have to go on. The next test in this elaborate courtship ritual comes on Sunday. Church attendance was a non-negotiable part of Victorian life, but who you sat with and walked with to and from services sent clear social signals about relationships and intentions. When Mr. Blackwood meets your family outside the church, heads turn. The message is clear to everyone. A courtship is officially underway. You can practically hear the gossip starting as you walk down the aisle to your family's pew, Mr. Blackwood at your side. After the service, Mr. Blackwood joins your family for Sunday luncheon, another significant step in the courtship progression. The meal is less formal than Friday's dinner, but no less laden with meaning. Mr. Blackwood has now been invited into your home twice in 1 week, a clear indication that your parents approve of his suit. I was thinking, your mother says as the meal concludes, that perhaps we might all attend the Wilsons' musical evening on Tuesday. They specifically mentioned hoping to see you there, Elellanena, and I'm sure they would be delighted if Mr. Blackwood accompanied us. Another public appearance together. The courtship is accelerating. That sounds delightful, Mr. Blackwood replies. If Miss Pembroke is amenable, of course. All eyes turn to you, though your agreement is assumed. To decline would be a public rejection, an embarrassment to both Mr. Blackwood and your family. I look forward to it, you say, the expected response. After Mr. Blackwood takes his leave, your mother corners you in the drawing room, her expression serious. Elellanena, I hope you understand how fortunate you are. Mr. Blackwood is everything we could hope for in a match for you, well-connected, financially secure, and of impeccable reputation. Your father and I are most pleased with his attentions. Translation. Don't mess this up. Yes, mother, you reply, because what else can you say? She pats your hand. I was worried, after your first season yielded no suitable offers, but Mr. Blackwood is actually a far better match than any of last year's prospects. Sometimes patience is rewarded. The implication being that you're lucky anyone wants you at all, especially at the advanced age of 21. In Victorian terms, you're practically on the shelf. The following days fall into a pattern. Carefully chaperoned outings, public appearances together, brief conversations under watchful eyes. Mr. Blackwood calls at your home regularly, always at the appropriate hours, always observed by your mother or another suitable chaperone. It's courtship by committee, romance by rote. Tuesday evening brings the Wilsons' musical soiree, a gathering of local families to listen to amateur performances and engage in careful, controlled socialization. Mr. Blackwood arrives to escort your family, offer his arm to you for the short walk to the Wilsons' home, your parents following close behind. The Wilsons' drawing room is crowded with familiar faces, all of whom notice your entrance with Mr. Blackwood. The message is clear. A courtship is well underway, perhaps nearing its conclusion. You can feel the eyes on you, assessing, speculating, judging. Mrs. Wilson, a plump, pleasant woman with a penchant for matchmaking, beams at the sight of you with Mr. Blackwood. Elellanena, my dear, and Mr. Blackwood, how lovely to see you both. Do come in. We're just about to begin the first performance. The evening progresses with a series of musical offerings of varying quality. Miss Henderson's shrill soprano, young Mr. Thompson's aggressive assault on pianoforte, Mrs. Wilson's daughter's competent but uninspired violin performance. Through it all, Mr. Blackwood sits beside you, a respectable 6 inches of space between you, occasionally leaning slightly closer to whisper a comment or observation. These tiny moments of near privacy are the most intimate you've been allowed, and you find yourself looking forward to them, not because of any particular affection for Mr. Blackwood, but simply for the novelty of conversation that isn't being actively monitored by your mother. During a brief intermission, while refreshments are served, you find yourself momentarily separated from your parents in the crowd. Mr. Blackwood seizes the opportunity. "Miss Pembroke," he says quietly, "might I have a moment of your time? There is something I wish to ask you." Your heart skips a beat. Is this it? The proposal? Here in the Wilsons' crowded drawing room with Mrs. Henderson's off-key rendition of Mozart still ringing in your ears? "Of course," you manage to reply. He guides you toward a slightly less crowded corner of the room, still in full view of everyone, but with the illusion of privacy. He looks uncharacteristically nervous, his usual composure slightly ruffled. "Miss Pembroke, Elellanena, if I may be so bold," he begins, his voice low. "We have now been in company several times, and I find myself—" He pauses, seeming to search for words, which is unusual for the typically articulate Mr. Blackwood. "Yes?" you prompt, your own pulse quickening despite yourself. "I find myself uncertain," he finally says, which is not at all what you expected. "Uncertain?" you repeat, confused. He glances around, ensuring no one is within earshot. "I have greatly enjoyed our time together, brief and supervised as it has been, but I cannot help feeling that we hardly know each other at all, that this entire process leaves little room for genuine acquaintance." You stare at him, astonished. Is Henry Blackwood, the embodiment of proper Victorian gentility, actually criticizing the very courtship system he's participating in? "I feel exactly the same way," you admit, the words tumbling out before you can stop them. "It's all so performative, like we're actors in play rather than real people." His expression softens with what looks like relief. "Exactly. I have seen you play the pianoforte and walk through gardens. I have discussed the weather with you at least 24 times, but I have no idea what you actually think about anything of substance. What makes you laugh? What you dream about?" This is such a departure from the script that you're momentarily speechless. No one has ever acknowledged the absurdity of the system so directly, least of all a participant in it. "What are you suggesting?" you ask, hardly daring to hope for some alternative. He sighs, running a hand through his perfectly arranged hair. Another break from proper form. "I don't know. The constraints are considerable, but perhaps we could attempt something slightly more genuine. Within the bounds of propriety, of course," he adds hastily. "Like what?" "Like—" He pauses a moment. "What if I ask you a real question right now? Something beyond the weather and musical preferences." You glance nervously at the crowd, spotting your mother engaged in conversation with Mrs. Wilson, temporarily distracted. "All right. What makes you happy, Elellanena Pembroke? Truly happy?" The question catches you off guard with its simplicity and directness. When was the last time anyone asked you that? Has anyone ever asked you that? "Oh, reading," you answer honestly. "Not just novels, though I do enjoy those scientific journals, botanical studies, history, learning about the world beyond these drawing rooms and garden parties." "And you? What makes Henry Blackwood happy?" He looks surprised and pleased at the question being turned back on him. "Solitude," he admits. "Not always. I enjoy good company. But there's something about being alone with one's thoughts, free from the constant performance society demands. I spend hours in my study, reading or simply thinking. My mother finds it most concerning," he adds with a small smile. This tiny exchange, this moment of genuine connection, feels more significant than all the formal interactions that preceded it. For the first time, you glimpse the real person behind the proper Victorian gentleman facade, and you find you rather like what you see. The moment is broken by your mother's voice. "Elellanena, Mr. Blackwood, you must come hear Miss Wilson's rendition of Beethoven." She's about to begin. Reality reasserts itself. The brief window of authenticity closes as quickly as it opened, and you both resume your prescribed roles. The proper young lady and her attentive suitor, maintaining appropriate distance, exchanging appropriate pleasantries, performing the courtship dance exactly as choreographed. But something has changed. As you take your seat for Miss Wilson's performance, you catch Mr. Blackwood's eye, and there's a new understanding between you, a shared recognition of the absurdity of it all, and perhaps a tentative alliance in your attempt to find something real within the artificial constraints of Victorian courtship. As Miss Wilson maskers Beethoven with enthusiastic incompetence, you find yourself wondering, is it possible to actually get to know someone, to build a genuine connection within a system designed to prevent exactly that? Or are you and Mr. Blackwood doomed to make life-altering decisions based on the flimsiest acquaintance, like everyone else? The most frustrating part of Victorian courtship wasn't just the restrictions themselves, but the fact that everyone knew they were ridiculous, yet continued to enforce them anyway. It was collective madness. Everyone playing along with rules they knew were absurd because the social consequences of breaking them were too severe. As the evening draws to a close and you prepare to leave, Mr. Blackwood helps you with your shawl, his fingers briefly brushing against your shoulder. The most intimate contact you've had, and entirely accidental. Even that tiny touch sends a jolt through you, not necessarily from attraction, but from the sheer novelty of physical contact with someone who isn't your maid or your mother. "Miss Pembroke," he says formally as your parents approach, "thank you for a most enjoyable evening." "The pleasure was mine, Mr. Blackwood." You respond, equally formal, but your eyes meet, and there's that flash of understanding again, the recognition that you're both playing parts in this elaborate social performance. But perhaps, just perhaps, there might be a way to find something genuine beneath the artifice. As your family walks home, your mother chats excitedly about how attentive Mr. Blackwood was, how impressed everyone seemed by the match, how fortunate you are to have attracted such an eligible suitor. Your father nods along, occasionally offering a comment or observation. Neither of them asks what you think or how you feel. That's not part of the script. Later, as Agnes helps you prepare for bed, she notices your distracted expression. "Something happened this evening," she observes shrewdly, "with Mr. Blackwood. Is it that obvious?" You hesitate, then decide to confide in her. Agnes has been your confidant since childhood, the one person with whom you can be honest. He said something unexpected, about how ridiculous it is that we're expected to make such important decisions based on such limited acquaintance, about wanting to know the real me, not just the version society demands. Agnes raises an eyebrow. "That's unusual and refreshing, I might add. So the perfect Mr. Blackwood is thought of his own beyond proper etiquette and suitable matches. Interesting. It was just a moment." You sigh, then Mother interrupted, and we went back to discussing the weather and pretending Miss Wilson's playing wasn't making the dog howl. Agnes chuckles as she brushes out your hair. Still, it's something. A crack in the perfect gentleman facade. I wonder what else might be behind it. So, do you? That night, as you lie in bed, you find yourself actually looking forward to your next encounter with Mr. Blackwood, curious to see if that moment of authenticity was a one-time aberration or the beginning of something more genuine. The courtship continues its prescribed path over the next weeks. More chaperoned outings, more public appearances, more carefully observed interactions. But now there's a subtle undercurrent, a secret understanding between you and Mr. Blackwood. You become conspirators of sorts, finding brief moments to exchange real thoughts and feelings within the strict confines of Victorian propriety. As your courtship with Mr. Blackwood progresses, the whispers grow louder. The servants exchange meaningful glances when he calls. Your mother has taken to casually mentioning wedding customs in everyday conversation. Even your father, usually absorbed in his business affairs, has begun to take a more active interest in your social calendar. Everyone is waiting for the proposal. Everyone except you. Agnes, you ask one evening as she brushes out your hair, "How did you know you wanted to marry Thomas?" Agnes and the footman Thomas have been quietly engaged for nearly a year, saving for a small cottage where they can live after their marriage. It's a love match, rare in a world where practicality usually trumps affection. Agnes's hands pause briefly. "I just knew, miss. When I'm with him, I feel more myself, not less." And the thought of waking up next to him for the next 50 years makes me happy, not anxious. You consider this. When you think about waking up next to Henry Blackwood for the next 50 years, you feel, what? Not dread, certainly, but not the quiet joy that lights Agnes's face when she speaks of Thomas. But how can anyone know for sure? You press, especially when we're never allowed to be ourselves during courtship. Agnes' resume is brushing, her expression thoughtful. That's the gamble, isn't it? You gather what clues you can, and then you leap, hoping there's something solid on the other side. A gamble indeed. A leap of faith with your entire future at stake. The next day brings another step in the courtship dance. Your father announces at breakfast that Mr. Blackwood has requested a private meeting with him in his study that afternoon. Your mother nearly drops her teacup in excitement. Today, oh Elellanena, we must make sure you look your best. The blue dress, I think, and perhaps the pearl earrings that were your grandmother's. Mother, you say carefully, we don't know why Mr. Blackwood wishes to speak with father. She gives you a look that clearly communicates you're being deliberately obtuse. Don't be ridiculous, Elellanena. A gentleman doesn't request a private meeting with a young lady's father to discuss the weather. She's right, of course. There's only one reason for such a meeting. Mr. Blackwood intends to ask your father's permission to propose marriage to you. Not your permission, mind you, your father's. Because in Victorian England, a woman was essentially transferred from one man's authority to another's. Your consent was assumed if your father approved the match. Your feelings on the matter were secondary at best, irrelevant at worst. The household is thrown into a flurry of activity. You're banished your room to rest while your mother supervises the preparation of refreshments for the all-important meeting. Your father retreats to his study to await Mr. Blackwood's arrival, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and the slight discomfort of a man about to engage in an emotional discussion. Agnes helps you change into the blue dress, her movements efficient but gentle. Nervous, Miss Elellanena? Terrified, you admit? What if father says yes? Agnes gives you a quizzical look. Isn't that what we're hoping for? Is it? You're not even sure anymore. In the beginning, marriage to Mr. Blackwood seemed like a sentence to be endured. Then, as you glimpsed the real person behind the proper facade, it began to seem more appealing. But now, faced with the reality of it, you're seized by doubt. What if we're making a terrible mistake? What if those few moments of genuine connection aren't enough? What if we marry and discover we're completely incompatible? Agnes sighs, adjusting your necklace. Those are questions every bride asks, miss, but most don't have the luxury of asking them until after the wedding. At precisely 3 o'clock, Mr. Blackwood arrives. From your window, you watch him approach the house, impeccably dressed as always, his posture straight, his stride purposeful. He disappears inside, and you're left to wait. The waiting is excruciating. You pace your room, unable to concentrate on reading or needlework. What are they discussing down there? Your dowry, certainly, your accomplishments as a potential wife, your family connections. But is anyone considering your happiness, your compatibility, your future together as actual human beings rather than as social and economic units entering a contractual arrangement? After what feels like an eternity, but is probably less than an hour, there's a knock at your door. It's your mother, her face flushed with excitement. Elellanena, come downstairs at once. Your father and Mr. Blackwood wish to speak with you in the drawing room. This is it, the moment the entire courtship has been building toward. You follow your mother downstairs, your heart pounding so loudly you're sure everyone can hear it. In the drawing room, your father and Mr. Blackwood stand as you enter. Your father looks pleased, Mr. Blackwood nervous but determined. Elellanena, your father begins. Mr. Blackwood has something he wishes to ask you. He and your mother exchange a look, then discreetly withdraw, leaving you alone with Mr. Blackwood. The first time you've ever been permitted such privacy. Of course, they're just outside the open door, within earshot and ready to intervene if needed, but it's still a monumental concession to the importance of the moment. Mr. Blackwood takes a step forward, then hesitates. For a man normally so composed, he appears uncharacteristically uncertain. Miss Pembroke, Elellanena, he begins, then stops, clearing his throat. I find myself at a disadvantage. Despite our weeks of acquaintance, I feel I hardly know how to speak to you without an audience of chaperones. You can't help but smile at this acknowledgement of the absurdity of your situation. It is rather strange, isn't it? To be suddenly granted privacy at this most crucial moment when we've been denied it throughout our entire acquaintance. He returns your smile, seeming to relax slightly. Indeed, though I suppose it follows the pattern of our peculiar courtship. Everything backward and constrained. There's a pause, both of you acutely aware of your parents hovering just outside, listening to every word. I have spoken with your father, Mr. Blackwood continues, his voice more formal now, and he has granted me permission to ask for your hand in marriage. Even though you knew it was coming, the words still land with the weight of an anvil. This is real. This is happening. Before I make my formal proposal, however, he says, lowering his voice slightly, I wanted to ask you something else, something outside the usual script. You look at him, surprised. Yes. Are you certain about me? About this? I know we've had precious few opportunities for genuine conversation, for true knowledge of each other. I find myself drawn to you, intrigued by the glimpses of your mind and character I've been permitted to see. But I can't help wondering if it's enough for either of us. The question takes your breath away. In all your imagined scenarios of this moment, you never expected him to express the very doubts that have been plaguing you. I've been asking myself the same thing, you admit quietly. We've had so little chance to truly know each other. He nods, looking relieved at your honesty. I've been corresponding with a cousin who married an American, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. She tells me that in America, couples are often permitted courtship walks alone together. No chaperones, just the two people getting to know each other. Can you imagine such freedom? You try to picture it, walking with Mr. Blackwood. Just the two of you, able to speak freely without constant supervision. It seems both thrilling and terrifying. It sounds scandalous. You reply with a small smile, and wonderful. He takes a deep breath. I cannot offer you such freedom, not in our society. But I can offer you honesty and my promise to always seek the real Elellanena beneath the proper Miss Pembroke everyone else sees, if you'll grant me the same courtesy. To see the real Henry, not just Mr. Blackwood, the suitable match. It's not a traditional proposal. There's no flowery declaration of love, no going down on one knee. Instead, it's something rarer and perhaps more valuable, an acknowledgement of your situation and a promise to make the best of it together. I believe I would like that very much, you say softly. He smiles, then remembers himself and assumes a more proper stance. Raising his voice slightly for the benefit of your listening parents, he asks formally, Miss Pembroke, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? And there it is, the question that will determine the course of your entire future, asked by a man you're still getting to know in a ritual choreographed by society rather than genuine feeling. Yes, Mr. Blackwood. You reply, equally formal, I would be honored to accept your proposal. There's a barely suppressed squeal from the hallway, and your parents reappear, beaming with satisfaction. Your mother's already dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Your father looking as pleased as you've ever seen him. Wonderful news, your mother exclaims. We must begin planning immediately. June weddings are traditional in our family, of course, and we'll need to announce the engagement formally. As she launches into wedding plans, Mr. Blackwood, Henry, catches your eye over her head and gives you a small, private smile. Whatever happens next, at least you're in this together, both aware of the absurdity of the system and determined to find something genuine within it. The engagement changes everything and nothing. Suddenly, you're granted slightly more freedom. You're allowed to sit slightly closer together, to walk with a little more distance from your chaperone, to exchange slightly more personal conversation. And of course, there are the engagement gifts. The day after the proposal, a package arrives for you. A beautiful gold ring set with a perfect diamond, accompanied by a note expressing Henry's sincere wishes for your happiness in our future together. The ring is placed on your finger with appropriate ceremony, your mother sniffling proudly throughout. More gifts follow, a delicate gold locket containing a lock of Henry's hair, the Victorian equivalent of a boyfriend selfie, a beautifully bound book of poetry with a personal inscription, a pair of kid gloves of the finest quality. Each gift is carefully chosen to be personal enough to show attention, but not so intimate as to be improper. The next stage of the elaborate Victorian engagement ritual is the formal announcement, first in person of family and close friends, then by mail to more distant connections, and finally in the newspaper for all society to see. Your mother throws a small dinner party for the initial announcement, inviting your closest family friends to share in the happy news. Watching the reactions is fascinating. Your mother's friends coo and exclaim with practiced delight. Your father's business associates offer hearty congratulations to Henry, and knowing looks to your father, another advantageous alliance secured. Your younger sister Jane practically bounces with excitement at the prospect of a wedding, while your married cousin Margaret gives you a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes, leaving you to wonder what wisdom or warning she might offer if you could speak privately. The newspaper announcement feels strangely official, as if your future wasn't really decided until it was printed in black and white for all to see. Mr. and Mrs. Edward Pembroke are pleased to announce the engagement of their daughter, Miss Elellanena Pembroke, to Mr. Henry Blackwood, son of the late Mr. James Blackwood and Mrs. Blackwood of Yorkshire. The wedding will take place in June at St. Mary's Church. Just like that, your fate is sealed in public print. There's no going back now without causing a scandal that would ruin both families' reputations. The funny thing about Victorian engagements is that while they granted slightly more freedom to the couple, they also came with a whole new set of rules and expectations. Engaged couples to hold hands, while wearing gloves, of course, take walks with chaperone at a discreet distance, and exchange certain types of gifts. But they still couldn't be alone together, couldn't use each other's first names in public, and absolutely couldn't display physical affection beyond the most restrained hand-holding. With your engagement officially announced, wedding preparations begin in earnest. Your mother transforms overnight from anxious matchmaker to manic wedding planner, obsessing over details from the church flowers to the wedding breakfast menu. "Elellanena, we simply must visit the dressmaker this week," she declares over breakfast. Mrs. Harrington's daughter's wedding dress took nearly 3 months to complete, and we have less than 4 months until June. The wedding dress, the ultimate symbol of the Victorian bride. White, of course, following Queen Victoria's trend-setting white wedding gown when she married Prince Albert, elaborate with yards of delicate lace, intricate beading, and a waist cinched to physically painful proportions. A dress designed not for comfort or practicality, but as a visual representation of purity, wealth, and feminine subjugation. Your first fitting is an ordeal that makes your daily corseting seem like casual comfort by comparison. The dressmaker, Mrs. Phillips, circles you like a hawk, measuring, pinning, and occasionally poking you with pins while muttering about your problematic waistline. "We'll need to take it in at least 2 more inches," she declares, yanking at the sample corset with alarming vigor. A bride must look her absolute best, and nothing flatters like a tiny waist. You gasp as the corset tightens beyond what you thought possible. "I can hardly breathe as it is," you protest weakly. Mrs. Phillips gives you a look that clearly communicates breathing is a secondary concern on your wedding day. "Beauty requires sacrifice, Miss Pembroke. Besides, the ceremony is but an hour and then the wedding breakfast. You can loosen it afterward." Your mother nods in agreement, apparently unconcerned that you might actually faint during your own wedding vows from lack of oxygen. The dress itself is admittedly beautiful. Ivory silk with delicate lace overlay, tiny pearl beading along the bodice, and a skirt wide enough to make doorways a navigational challenge. Looking at the preliminary sketches, you can't help but wonder what Henry will think when he sees you in it. Henry! It still feels strange to think of Mr. Blackwood by his given name, even in the privacy of your own thoughts. Despite your engagement, you still refer to each other as Miss Pembroke and Mr. Blackwood in public, as Victorian etiquette demands. Only in your private correspondence, another new privilege of engagement, do you address each other by your first names. The letters are perhaps the greatest gift of your engagement period. Finally, a way to communicate directly without chaperones or social constraints. Of course, there are still limits. Nothing too personal or passionate would be proper, even between an engaged couple. But compared to the stifled conversations of your courtship, these letters are revelation. Henry writes to you about his daily life, his thoughts on books you both read, his plans for the future, your future together. You respond in kind, gradually revealing more of yourself, testing the waters of genuine connection. In one letter, he mentions a small cottage on his family's estate. Nothing grand, but peacefully situated by a stream with a garden that's sadly neglected but has potential. I thought perhaps we might make it our own little retreat, a place away from society's constant scrutiny, where we could simply be ourselves. The idea is intoxicating. A private space just for the two of you, away from watchful eyes and social expectations. You find yourself daydreaming about it during tedious wedding planning sessions with your mother, imagining lazy afternoons reading by the stream, evenings spent in actual conversation rather than formal dinner parties, mornings waking up to birdsong rather than the demands of social calendars. But first, you have to get to the wedding itself, an event that grows more elaborate with each passing day as your mother's plans expand. The Harringtons and the Wilsons must be invited, of course, she muses, reviewing her guest list 100 times. And the Thompsons, though their youngest daughter's behavior at the last musical evening was most improper, perhaps just the parents and the older children. The guest list already numbers over 100, most of them people you barely know, business connections, distant relatives, social acquaintances invited more for appearances' sake than any genuine connection to you or Henry. The wedding isn't really about you anyway. It's a social event, a public demonstration of family status and alliances, with you and Henry as merely the central decoration. Amidst the whirlwind of wedding preparations, you and Henry continue your carefully supervised courtship. He calls at your home regularly, taking tea with your family, accompanying you on walks with your mother or sister a few paces behind, escorting your family to church and social events. During one such visit, you manage a rare moment of semi-privacy in the garden, your mother distracted by a neighbor calling over the fence about some parish matter. How are you bearing up under the wedding preparations? Henry asks quietly. Your mother seems to be approaching it with military precision. You laugh. I feel rather like a foot soldier being deployed according to her strategic vision. Yesterday, she spent 3 hours debating the merits of different cake decorations. My mother is similarly engaged, he says. She's already redecorating rooms in our house that she's certain you'll find lacking. Our house. The words send a small shiver through you. Soon you'll be leaving your family home to live with Henry and his mother, another common arrangement in Victorian marriages. Your entire life will be uprooted and replanted in new soil under the authority of a new household. Are you nervous? He asks, watching your face carefully. About the wedding, about everything after? The everything after hangs in the air between you, laden with unspoken implications. The wedding night, physical intimacy, the reality of married life together. All things that proper Victorian etiquette forbids you from discussing explicitly, even with the man you're about to marry. Yes, you admit simply. Aren't you? He nods, his expression serious. I am. Despite our letters, despite these months of acquaintance, I feel there's still so much unknown between us. So much we haven't been permitted to discover about each other. It's a startlingly honest admission, especially from a Victorian gentleman who suppose project confidence and certainty at all times. I'm afraid, you confess, your voice barely above a whisper, that we've made this momentous decision based on too little information, that we're strangers entering a lifetime commitment. He's quiet for a moment, considering. Perhaps we are, in some ways. But I've come to believe that marriage isn't a destination, but a journey. We may be starting as relative strangers, but we have a lifetime to become whatever we choose to become to each other. It's a surprisingly modern perspective, especially coming from someone raised in the rigid Victorian system. Before you can respond, your mother returns, and the moment of honesty passes, replaced once again by the proper script of engaged couple in polite society. As the wedding approaches, the preparations intensify. Your trousseau, the collection of clothes, linens, and personal items you'll take to your new home, must be assembled and displayed for female friends and relatives to inspect and admire. Every item is scrutinized, from the quality of your nightgowns, modest but made of the finest cotton, to the embroidery on your handkerchiefs, done by your own hand as is proper. The trousseau display is yet another performance, another public demonstration of your preparedness for married life. Your mother's friends exclaim over the fineness of the stitching, the quality of the fabrics, the appropriateness of each item. It's like being a horse at auction, your value assessed through the proxy of your possessions. Through it all, you and Henry continue to exchange letters, building a fragile bridge of understanding between the public performances you are both required to give. In one particularly meaningful exchange, he writes, "I've been thinking about our conversation in the garden, about being strangers embarking on a lifetime together. It's a daunting prospect, certainly, but I find myself increasingly optimistic. The glimpses I've had of the real Elellanena, your intelligence, your quiet humor, your thoughtfulness, make me eager to discover more. Perhaps our unconventional beginning will lead to something more genuine than many marriages founded on illusion of knowledge." You read and reread this letter late at night, finding comfort in his words. Perhaps he's right. Perhaps this strange, backward system might still result in something worthwhile, something real. Or perhaps you're both deluding yourselves, clinging to optimism in the face of a fundamentally flawed arrangement. Only time will tell. As the wedding day approaches, one final ritual remains, the discussion of certain womanly matters related to marriage. This delicate task falls to your mother, who approaches it with visible discomfort one evening about 2 weeks before the wedding. "Elellanena," she begins stiffly, closing the door to your bedroom for privacy. "There's a certain aspect of married life that we must discuss before your wedding day." You brace yourself for the notorious Victorian birds and bees talk, rumored among your friends to be vague to the point of uselessness and frightening in its implications. A wife has certain duties to her husband. Your mother continues, staring fixedly at a point somewhere over your left shoulder. These duties may seem challenging at first, but remember that they are natural and ordained by God for continuation of the family. This is about as specific as Victorian sex education gets. Vague references to duties and challenges without any actual information about what those duties entail or how to perform them. Women were expected to enter marriage completely ignorant of physical intimacy, then somehow transform overnight into willing partners in the marital bed. The most important thing to remember, your mother presses on, her discomfort palpable, is that a lady endures with dignity and thinks of England. Think of England, the notorious Victorian advice to women regarding marital relations. Lie back, think of England, and wait for it to be over. Sex, not as a mutual pleasure, but as a patriotic duty to be endured. Are there any questions you wish to ask? Your mother finishes, clearly hoping the answer is no. You have dozens of questions, of course. What exactly happens on the wedding night? Will it hurt? Is it possible to enjoy it, or is endurance the best you can hope for? What if you do everything wrong? What if Henry is disappointed? But you know your mother cannot and will not answer these questions. Victorian prudery has rendered her as incapable of discussing these matters as it has rendered you ignorant of them. "No, mother," you replied dutifully. "Thank you for your guidance." She looks relieved, pats your hand awkwardly, and beats a hasty retreat, her uncomfortable maternal duty discharged.